The night my sister got married, she turned my life into a quiet joke. Not loud enough to call it cruelty, just subtle enough to make everyone believe I was the problem. She smiled, introduced me as the sad single sister, and made sure every table saw it. And for a while, I played along. I always did. Until a stranger leaned in and said, "Pretend you're with me." That was the moment everything shifted. Because this was not just embarrassment anymore. This was revenge. The kind where you do not fight back, you just let the truth rearrange the room. I am your host, and this is what happened the night she lost control of the story she thought she owned. Chapter 1. Someone smiled at me, then looked right past me, like I had already failed a test I did not know I was taking. I am Ilara Vance, and by 33, I could recognize that moment before it fully landed. My sister Lydia's wedding was held at a restored estate just outside Westchester, the kind of place people choose when they want their lives to look effortless and expensive at the same time. Late fall of 2023, cool air, soft golden light, everything curated down to the smallest detail. I arrived alone. Not because I had no one to bring, but because I was done borrowing someone just to make other people comfortable. At the entrance, a server handed me a place card. Table 12. I followed the numbers, weaving through clusters of people who seemed to belong to each other without thinking about it. Hands brushing, shoulders leaning in, conversations flowing without effort. Then I saw where 12 was, right next to the service doors. They swung open every few seconds, releasing a wave of heat, the clatter of dishes, quick voices from the kitchen before snapping shut again. It was close enough to the noise to be distracting, far enough from the center to be forgotten. You did not need anyone to explain what that meant. I sat down anyway. Across from me were a few of Lydia's coworkers and my great-aunt Janet. She took one look at me, leaned forward, and asked the question she'd probably been saving. Still single? No pause, no apology. I smiled, because I always did. She nodded, like I had confirmed something important, then went back to her drink. I looked around the room. Everywhere I turned, people seemed settled into something. Couples, families, people who knew exactly where they stood in each other's lives. I told myself I was fine. I had told myself that before, and every time I said it, it got a little easier to pretend. A hand closed around my arm. Lydia. Her smile was warm enough for anyone watching. "Come with me," she said softly, already guiding me away. She led me into a group of Richard's relatives, all of them polished, composed, the kind of people who expected to be listened to. "This is my sister Ilara," Lydia said easily. "She works in marketing. She's doing really well, just very focused on her career right now." It sounded like praise if you didn't know her. If you did, you heard exactly what she was doing. A woman with perfect posture touched my arm. "You'll meet someone," she said gently. "Just don't wait too long." Another voice followed, lighter. "Men don't usually go for women who are too selective." I nodded. I thanked them. I kept my face calm. Inside, something tightened. I caught my mother watching from a distance. She gave me a small, careful smile. My father stood a few steps away, his attention fixed somewhere else, as if not looking directly at it meant he didn't have to step in. No one said anything cruel. That's what made it work. Nothing sharp enough to challenge, nothing obvious enough to push back against, just a quiet agreement that something about me needed to be fixed. Lydia squeezed my arm once, like she had finished what she came to do, and turned away. I made my way back to table 12. The chair felt heavier this time, like it had absorbed the conversation and was holding it in place for me. I picked up my glass. The champagne tasted flat. In the back of my mind, the call from the morning replayed itself. "I know today might be hard for you," Lydia had said, her voice soft in that careful way she used when she wanted to sound kind. "Seeing everyone like this." "Like what?" I had asked, even though I already knew. "Happy," she said. "Settled." I had told her I would be fine. There had been a pause, just long enough to matter. "Just don't disappear into a corner, okay?" I almost laughed now, sitting exactly where she had placed me. Another burst of heat brushed my face as the kitchen doors opened again. A waiter rushed past, not even noticing me. For a second, I watched him, envying how easily he moved through the room without being part of it. Then I looked back toward the center. Lydia moved from one group to another, her dress catching the light, her smile landing exactly where it needed to. People leaned toward her. They listened. She knew how to control a room, and tonight she decided exactly what I was supposed to be inside it. That should have been the worst part. It wasn't. I could feel it building. The next introduction, the next quiet question, the next small reminder that I didn't fit the version of life everyone else seemed to agree on. I shifted in my chair and noticed something I'd missed before. 2 empty seats at my table, reserved but not used, placed there on purpose. I exhaled slowly as the realization settled. This was not random. The table, the introductions, the timing of it all. It was arranged. I set my glass down and rested my hands in my lap, forcing myself to stay still. Across the room, Lydia laughed, effortless, controlled, exactly where she wanted to be. For a moment, I watched her. Then I looked away, because I finally understood something I'd been avoiding all night. I was not invisible. I was being shown exactly the way she wanted me to be seen. And for the first time, instead of shrinking, something in me pushed back, quiet but steady. If this was the role she'd written for me, then maybe she'd made one mistake. She assumed I'd keep playing it, and she had no idea how wrong that was. I stayed where I was for a second longer than I needed to, like if I did not move, the room might forget about me again. It did not. A photographer stepped up to the table, scanning faces quickly, deciding where people belonged before they even spoke. His eyes landed on me last. "We're pulling the bride's family for photos," he said. "Are you with someone, or should I group you with the singles?" It sounded like logistics. It felt like a label. "Just me," I said. He nodded once, already turning away, but not before I caught the small shift in his expression. Not rude, just adjusted. That should have been nothing. It was not. By the time I reached the group near the front, I could already feel it again, that quiet recalibration. People making room without really making space. Great Aunt Janet did not bother easing into it. "So you really are still on your own?" she said, loud enough for a couple standing nearby to glance over. I kept my voice steady. "I'm fine, Aunt Janet." She gave a short laugh. Fine is what people say when they don't want to answer. A woman I didn't recognize leaned closer, lowering her voice like she was offering help. "Have you tried the apps?" she asked. "My niece met someone that way." "I have," I said. "And?" "It did not work out." She nodded slowly. "Maybe you're setting the bar a little high." There it was again. I smiled, because that was easier than explaining that lowering the bar had never made anything better. Another man joined in, half amused. Guys can tell when a woman is too selective. It makes them nervous. I almost asked him what part of me was supposed to make anyone comfortable. I did not. I just nodded again. Inside, something pulled tighter. I thought about the dates I had gone on, the polite conversations that went nowhere, the moments where I had tried to make myself easier to choose, only to realize I was disappearing in the process. I was not alone because I couldn't find someone. I was alone because I refused to stay where I was not respected. Lydia appeared beside me, right on cue. She slipped her arm around my shoulder, smiling like she was rescuing me from something. "You okay?" she asked softly. I met her eyes. "I'm fine." She held my gaze a second longer, searching for something, then smiled wider for the people around us. "Good," she said. "I just didn't want you standing here by yourself all night. That would look a little sad." The word landed clean. A few people shifted, pretending they hadn't heard it. I did not react. Lydia squeezed my shoulder once, then let go. I thought about leaving right then. I really did. I even took a step back, ready to walk away from the group, from the room, from the version of the night she had built for me. I should have left. I did not. Instead, I drifted back to table 12, the noise from the kitchen louder now, more noticeable, like everything I had tried to ignore was pushing forward at once. I sat down, reached for my glass, then stopped halfway. Across the room, Marion was watching me. When our eyes met, she smiled too quickly. A minute later, she was standing beside my chair. "We are about to do the bouquet toss. You should come." I shook my head. "I'm good here." She laughed lightly. "Come on, don't hide. It'll be fun." Fun. I almost said no again. Then I felt it, that familiar pressure. Not loud, not forceful, just constant. I stood. "Fine," I said. She took my hand and pulled me toward the center before I could change my mind. A loose circle of women had already formed, most of them younger, brighter, leaning into each other like they expected something good to happen. I stayed near the edge. Lydia stood a few feet away, bouquet in hand, smiling like this was exactly how she wanted it to look. She glanced at me, just for a second. The music picked up, something upbeat, easy to clap along with. People started turning towards us, attention shifting in a slow wave across the room. More eyes than before. More than I wanted. Marion nudged me forward. "Get ready," she said. I was not ready. Lydia turned her back to the group, lifting the bouquet. For a second, everything slowed. I could feel the room watching, even the people pretending not to. I could feel my own heartbeat, steady but louder than it should have been. Then she threw it. The flowers lifted clean into the air, catching the light as they arced. Not toward me. They landed a few feet to my left, caught by a girl who let out a loud, surprised laugh. The circle erupted, clapping, cheering, voices rising all at once. Lydia turned back around, laughing with them. "Looks like Alara is still waiting," she said, just loud enough. This time, more people heard it. Heads turned, smiles widened. A few people tried not to react and failed. It spread. Not cruelty, recognition. That was worse. Something in my chest went quiet. I stepped out of the circle before anyone could stop me. Behind me, the music kept going, the moment already shifting into something lighter, easier for everyone else except me. I walked back to table 12, each step slower than the last. When I reached my chair, I did not sit. I stood there, looking at the empty seats, the half-finished drinks, the place settings that felt like placeholders for something that was never coming. I picked up my bag. For a second, I thought about leaving without saying anything, just walking out, letting the night continue without me, letting Lydia have exactly the story she wanted. Maybe that would have been easier. I slipped the strap over my shoulder. That's when I heard it. "Pretend you're with me." The voice was low, steady, close enough that I felt it before I fully processed it. I turned. And for the first time that night, something shifted in a way that didn't feel planned. I turned toward the voice, not fast, not slow, just enough to show I had heard it. He stood close, close enough that I did not have to search for him, but far enough that he was not crowding me. Tall, composed, the kind of presence that did not try to take space and still ended up owning it. "Stay," he said quietly. There was no urgency in it, no pressure, just certainty. I should have asked who he was. I did not. "What exactly am I staying for?" I asked. A hint of a smile crossed his face, quick and gone. "For the part where it shifts," he said. That was vague enough to be useless, and somehow exactly what I needed. "I am William Ashford," he added, like it was an afterthought. The name landed somewhere familiar, not personal, but close enough to matter. I had heard it in conversations I was not meant to be part of, mentioned with that slight change in tone people use when someone carries weight. "You are related to Richard," I said. "Cousin. Flew in from Boston this morning." He said it like it explained everything. "What about you?" he asked. "You were leaving." "I still might," I said. He nodded, like that was fair. "Give it a minute," he said. "You will want to see this part." I almost smiled. "You sound very sure," I said. "I usually am," he replied. There was no arrogance in it. That's what made it convincing. He shifted slightly, not touching me yet, just aligning himself so that anyone looking would have to include him when they looked at me. That's when I felt it. Not saw it, felt it. Across the room, Lydia's voice paused, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but long enough for me to recognize. When I looked up, she was already watching us. Not me, him. Marion followed her gaze a second later. That should have made me step back. It did not. "Do not react," William said under his breath. "To what?" I asked. "To them catching up." I followed his line of sight. At the bar, a small group had gone quiet. Not completely, just enough. One of them leaned toward another. "That's Ashford," he said. "Who?" someone asked. "Built that logistics platform a few years ago, sold a big piece of it last year." Another voice joined in. "I thought he stayed in Boston. Looks like he does not tonight." It happened faster than I expected. Nothing about me had changed, but the way people looked at me did. Curiosity came first, then recognition, then something else. I exhaled slowly, not realizing I had been holding my breath. "You see it?" William asked. "I feel it," I said. He nodded once. "Good." He placed his hand lightly at the small of my back then, not possessive, not hesitant, just enough to close the space that had been left open all night. It was deliberate, and it worked. Lydia started moving towards us, not fast, not obvious, but direct. "William," she said when she reached us, her voice smooth, controlled. "I didn't know you made it." "I almost didn't," he replied. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to him. "And you two know each other?" I opened my mouth, but he answered first. "We go back. Lost touch for a while." The lie landed clean. Lydia held his gaze a second longer than necessary. "I had no idea," she said. "That makes two of us," he replied. A small pause stretched between them. I watched her calculate. Then she smiled again, wider this time, but not quite as steady. "Well," she said, "I'm glad you found each other tonight." Her eyes settled on me for a fraction of a second. Different now, sharper. Then she turned, already stepping back into the room, but something in her movement was off, just slightly. William watched her go, then looked back at me. "She doesn't like surprises," he said. "You're a surprise," I said. "So are you," he replied. I almost disagreed. Then I realized he was right. For the first time that night, I was not trying to catch up anymore. They were. William leaned back slightly, relaxed, like none of it mattered. "Don't overplay it," he said under his breath. "What are they figuring out?" I asked. "Whatever makes sense to them. That's how it works." I let that settle. For the first time all night, I was not thinking about how I looked. I was thinking about how it felt. And it felt different. Not fixed, not safe, but no longer entirely controlled by someone else. That was new. William tapped his glass lightly against mine. "Just sit," he said. I nodded. Across the room, Lydia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes anymore. I caught the moment it slipped, just for a second. That should have scared me. It did not. Because for the first time, I realized something I had not allowed myself to think before. I was not the one trying to catch up anymore. They were. William leaned back closer, just enough that only I could hear him. "Let's keep her guessing," he said, and I did not look away this time. Chapter 4. I did not pull my hand away when he stood, and that alone felt like crossing a line I had been trained not to cross. He did not rush me. He just held his hand there, steady, like he already knew what I would do. "Come with me," he said quietly. I glanced once toward the edge of the room, toward the place where I had spent most of the night trying to not be noticed. Then I looked back at him. "Okay," I said. He did not smile. He just nodded, like that was enough. We walked toward the dance floor together. Not fast, not slow, just in step. The music had softened into something slower, something that pulled people closer without asking. Conversations faded just enough to make space for movement. I could feel it again, the shift in the room, Only this time it did not feel like something happening to me, it felt like something I was stepping into. William's hand settled at my back, guiding without pressure. There was nothing showy in the way he moved, no performance. That made it harder for anyone to dismiss. "You are good," he said under his breath. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "Exactly," he replied. That landed differently now. We walked in a slow circle, not really dancing, more like holding a place in the middle of something that had already started to change. I felt the eyes first. Then I saw them. People who had barely looked at me earlier were watching now, not openly, but not hiding it either. Conversations tilted in our direction. A couple near the bar leaned in. "That's him," one of them said quietly. "And her," the other added. The difference was small, but it was everything. This was not supposed to happen, not like this. I let that thought settle for a second, then let it go, because for the first time, I did not feel the need to correct it. Across the room, Lydia stood still. She was still smiling, still nodding at whatever someone was saying to her, but her attention was not there. It kept slipping back to us, checking, recalculating. For a moment, I saw it clearly. She had lost the thread. William shifted his hand slightly, grounding. "Do not look at her," he said. "I'm not," I said. "You were," he replied. He was right again. I looked back at him instead. "You seem very comfortable doing this," I said. "I'm comfortable when something needs to be said without being said," he answered. "And this needed to be said?" I asked. He met my eyes. "You did," he said. That hit harder than I expected. Before I could respond, a voice cut in. "Mind if I cut in?" Lydia stood beside us, close enough that I could see the tension she was trying to hide. William did not move. "Actually," he said, calm and even, "we're in the middle of something." The words were simple. They landed anyway. Lydia's smile tightened just slightly. "I'm sure she won't mind," she said, turning toward me. For a second, the room narrowed. I could feel the weight of it, the expectation, the version of me that would have stepped back, laughed it off, made it easier for everyone. I did not do that. "I mind," I said. The silence that followed was sharper than anything Lydia had said all night. William did not break eye contact with her. "I've been watching you," he said. Her expression did not change, but something underneath it shifted. "Watching me?" she repeated. "Yes," he said. "And if this is how you treat your sister, you might want to rethink it." There was no edge in his voice, no accusation, just clarity. That landed harder. A couple nearby stopped talking entirely. Someone shifted their stance, like they were trying to stay out of it and couldn't. Lydia let out a small laugh. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said. "I think you do," he replied. Another pause, long enough to stretch. For a second, I saw it in her eyes. Not anger, not embarrassment, calculation failing. "Well," she said, finally, her voice smoother than it felt, "I'm glad she has someone looking out for her." Her eyes flicked to me, quick and sharp. Then she stepped back. "I'll let you enjoy your moment," she added. She turned before either of us could answer. And just like that, she was gone. But something had changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just enough. William exhaled once. "That was not subtle," I said. "It was not supposed to be," he replied. The music continued, but it felt different now. We stepped off the dance floor together. As we moved, I noticed it again. People making space. Not out of politeness, out of awareness. That was new. William stopped near the seating area and caught the attention of a staff member. "Can we move her seat?" he asked. The man nodded immediately. "Of course, sir." No hesitation, no question. Within minutes, my place card was lifted from table 12 and set down at a table near the center. I watched it happen. Quiet, efficient, final. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "I know," he replied. We sat. Not near the doors, not at the edge, in the middle. The difference was not loud, but it was real. A few minutes later, the music shifted again. The garter toss. Energy moved through the room, people gathering, laughing, calling out. William stood. "You're not serious," I said. "I am," he replied. He stepped into the group, not pushing, not forcing, just placing himself where he needed to be. The moment came fast. A quick movement, a shift. Then he had it. The garter in his hand. A ripple moved through the crowd. "He actually got it," someone said. "No way," another voice replied. He looked around once, then his eyes found mine. He held my gaze, long enough to be clear. This was not chance. I gave a small nod. He walked toward me, each step measured, each eye following. When he stopped in front of me, the room felt still. He did not say anything. He did not need to. He chose me. The reaction came fast. Laughter, whispers, a shift that spread through the room like something breaking open. I felt it, but it didn't land the same way anymore, because this time I was not being positioned, I was being seen. Across the room, I found Lydia again. She was watching, not smiling, not speaking, just watching, and for the first time, she did not look like she knew how this was supposed to end. I stepped into the parking lot and let the door close behind me, cutting off the noise like it had never been there. For a second, I just stood there. The air felt colder than it should have, sharp enough to wake me up, steady enough to let everything settle. My hands were still, my breathing even, but inside something was still catching up. Footsteps came a moment later, not rushed, not hesitant. I did not turn right away. "You always walk out at the exact moment things get interesting," William said. I let out a small breath, not quite a laugh. "I think I stayed longer than I was supposed to," I said. "Yeah," he replied. "You did." I looked at him then. Under the parking lot lights, he looked the same as he had inside, calm, certain, like nothing about what just happened surprised him. "Somewhere between that dance," he said, quieter now, "it stopped being pretend." I held his gaze for a second. "It did," I said. There was no need to turn it into something bigger. No need to explain it. For once, something just was what it was. He stepped a little closer, not enough to change anything, just enough to make the space between us feel intentional. He added, "I meant what I said in there." "I know," I said. And I did. But the part that stayed with me was not what he said. It was what I did not do. I did not step aside. I did not laugh it off. I did not make it easier. I stayed. For a long time, I thought strength meant letting things pass, keeping the peace, not making moments uncomfortable. Tonight proved something else. Sometimes staying in the moment is what changes it. We went back inside after a while, but it did not feel like the same room anymore. People still talked, still moved, still filled the space with the same energy, but the way they looked at me had shifted. It was not subtle. It was not dramatic either. It was just different. I passed a group near the bar and heard it without trying. "That's her," someone said. "With him," another voice added. I kept walking. Across the room, Lydia was still doing what she had been doing all night, smiling, talking, moving from one group to another. But something had changed there too. People were listening, just not the same way. There was a pause now, a slight hesitation before they responded, like something about the conversation didn't land the way it used to. She had not lost anything visible. She had not made a scene. Nothing about her had broken, but something about her had been seen. And once that happens, it doesn't go back. Our eyes met for a second. She held it longer before. Not confident, not in control, just aware. I looked away first, not because I had to, because I could. That was new. I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not an apology, not an explanation, not even acknowledgement. That realization settled quietly, but it stayed. I moved through the rest of the night without thinking about where I stood or how I looked. I just existed, and that was enough. The next year, William and I started seeing each other. There was no moment where it suddenly became something, it just grew. Conversations that lasted longer than expected, silences that felt easy instead of empty, time that didn't feel like something I had to prove anything through. By the middle of the year, we were living together in Boston, not because it made a statement, because it made sense. Nothing about it felt forced, nothing about it felt like it needed to be explained. By the end of the following year, he asked me to marry him. No crowd, no setup, just a quiet night, the kind that doesn't try to be memorable. "Stay," he said. I smiled. "I already did," I answered. When we planned our wedding, it looked different. Not bigger, not louder, just honest. People showed up. They laughed. They celebrated. Lydia stood to speak. Her voice was steady, practiced, familiar. She talked about family, about growth, about how she had always believed in me. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to, because the version of me she described no longer depended on her to exist. When she finished, people clapped. I smiled. Not because everything had been fixed, but because it didn't need to be. That was the part I carried with me. I didn't win because she lost. I didn't stand there because she stepped back. I stood there because I stopped letting someone else decide where I belonged. And if there's anything worth remembering from all of this, it's simple. The best kind of revenge is not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't need an audience. It's the moment you realize you no longer need to be chosen to know your own worth. If you've ever felt like you were standing in a room where everyone else decided who you were supposed to be, then you understand it. And if you've ever walked away from that and realized you didn't need their version anymore, then you already know how it ends. You just have to stay long enough to see it. If this story meant something to you, stay with me. Share your thoughts below and follow along for more stories that might feel a little closer to your own.